They told you that vulnerability is a superpower. For the last decade, you have been bombarded by a coordinated, massive psychological campaign led by social media gurus, modern therapists, and best-selling authors. They stand on brightly lit stages, and they tell you that the ultimate form of bravery is to open up. They tell you to drop your armor. They tell you to share your deepest insecurities, your crippling anxieties, and your darkest fears with the world. They promise you that by bleeding publicly, you will foster deep, authentic connections, and people will love you for your flaws. Think about the exact moment you decided to follow this disastrous advice. Think about the time you sat across from your business partner, or your boss, or the woman you love, and you decided to be completely vulnerable. You confessed your self-doubt. You admitted that you felt like an imposter. You let your voice shake, and you exposed the fragile, terrified core of your psyche. Did you feel the shift in the room? They might have smiled. They might have offered you a warm, comforting platitude. But if you paid attention to their eyes, if you watched the microscopic shift in their body language, you saw the brutal, undeniable truth. The respect vanished. The dynamic permanently altered. You thought you were building a bridge of empathy, but you were actually dismantling your own castle and handing them the bricks. The terrifying reality of power dynamics is this: exposing your weaknesses does not generate respect. It provides the exact coordinates of your vulnerabilities to a world that is fundamentally designed to exploit them. This is core wisdom. If you are tired of being a casualty of modern emotional manipulation, if you are ready to rebuild the iron walls of your mind and walk the path of the sovereign, you are in the right place. Subscribe. We build the fortress together. Let us perform a ruthless, unsympathetic deconstruction of this modern disease. We must drag the concept of vulnerability out of the comfortable, sterilized realm of modern therapy and drop it directly into the unforgiving, blood-soaked arena of human nature. We must examine the predator's buffet. You have been conditioned to believe that human beings have somehow evolved past our primal biology. You believe that because we wear tailored suits, work in glass office buildings, and send polite emails, the ancient laws of the jungle have been suspended. You believe that the modern world is a safe space. There are no safe spaces. The environment has changed, but the genetic code of the apex predator remains exactly the same. Look at the brutal mechanics of nature. When an animal in the wild is injured, when it walks with a limp or exposes a bleeding wound, what happens? Does the rest of the pack gather around it to hold a supportive circle? Do the predators look at the bleeding animal and think, "What a brave, authentic creature. I should respect its vulnerability"? Absolutely not. The pack abandons it because it is a liability to their survival, and the predators instantly lock onto the scent of the blood, isolate the weakest link, and tear it to pieces. You are operating in an environment that is governed by the exact same biological laws. The corporate hierarchy, the free market, and the social ladder are entirely predatory ecosystems. When you sit down with your manager or your colleagues and you openly discuss your overwhelming stress, your inability to handle the pressure, or your deep-seated lack of confidence, you are actively bleeding in shark-infested waters. You are completely convinced that they will see your humanity and reward you with grace. But look at the mechanics of power. Why would a company hand the crown to a man who just admitted his neck is too weak to carry it? Why would an investor hand millions of dollars to an entrepreneur who is publicly paralyzed by imposter syndrome? They will not. They will listen to your vulnerable confession. They will nod empathetically, and then they will immediately place a mental red flag next to your name. You have just permanently downgraded your own status. You have voluntarily labeled yourself as a high-risk, low-yield asset. When the time comes for a promotion, when the time comes to select a leader for a critical, high-stakes mission, you will be quietly passed over. They will choose the man who kept his mouth shut and projected an aura of absolute, unbreakable certainty. But the damage of vulnerability goes much deeper than just losing a promotion. You are fundamentally surrendering your leverage. In any negotiation, in any power struggle, your greatest asset is the illusion of your own invincibility. Your leverage is derived from the fact that the opponent does not know where your armor ends and your flesh begins. They do not know what hurts you. They do not know what makes you panic. Because they lack this information, they must proceed with extreme caution. They must assume you are fully armed and dangerous. When you open up, you destroy the illusion. You hand them the blueprint of your psychological weaknesses. You tell a coworker about your deep fear of public failure. You tell a business partner about your financial anxieties. You think you are sharing a secret with a friend, but you are actually arming a potential enemy. The people you work with are not your family. The free market is not your therapist. In a high-stakes environment, resources are finite, and competition is absolute zero-sum. For them to win, someone else has to lose. 6 months after your beautiful, vulnerable confession, a conflict arises. A power struggle ensues over a lucrative project. Suddenly, that coworker remembers your deep fear of public failure. They casually maneuver you into a highly visible, high-pressure presentation, knowing exactly which psychological buttons to press to make you crack under the pressure. They weaponize your own confession to orchestrate your downfall, and they do it with a smile on their face. You handed them the knife. You drew a circle on your own back, and then you acted surprised when you felt the blade go in. This is the ultimate trap of toxic empathy. Society encourages you to be soft because soft people are incredibly easy to control, incredibly easy to predict, and incredibly easy to destroy. They want you to be an open book because an open book can be read, manipulated, and burned by anyone who walks past. The modern man has been reduced to a bleeding swimmer. You are thrashing around in a dark, unforgiving ocean, surrounded by predators, and instead of swimming faster or building a boat, you take out a knife and cut your own arm. You let the blood spill into the water, desperately hoping that the sharks will appreciate your authenticity. The sharks do not care about your authenticity. The sharks only care about the blood. You must understand that the desire to be vulnerable is often just a disguised form of profound laziness. It is the ego seeking a shortcut to connection without having to put in the grueling work of earning respect. It is much easier to sit down and cry about your flaws than it is to stand up, go into the dark, and actually fix them. You want the reward of intimacy, but you want to pay for it with the cheap currency of your own self-pity. But true respect, the kind of respect that generates actual gravity and power in the physical world, is never, ever bought with weakness. It is exclusively purchased with strength. Let us move from the boardroom to the most dangerous, unforgiving interface of vulnerability. Let us look at the devastating impact this lie has on your romantic relationships. Let us discuss the burden of the rock. Modern culture has aggressively pushed a specific, highly destructive narrative onto men. They tell you that women want a soft man. They tell you that to build deep, authentic intimacy with your partner, you need to cry in front of her. You need to dump all of your unedited anxieties, your workplace stress, and your existential dread right into her lap. You are told that sharing your absolute lowest moments of weakness will make her love you more. This is the most lethal biological trap ever set for the modern man. It is a fundamental violation of evolutionary psychology. You must understand that human beings are not blank slates. We are ancient biological machines running on millions of years of evolutionary programming, and that programming does not care about the latest trending hashtag on social media. It does not care about modern progressive therapy. At a primal, subconscious level, a feminine woman is seeking one specific thing above all else: an unshakable foundation. She is looking for a fortress. She is looking for a man who is a solid, immovable rock in the middle of a chaotic, violent storm. Her entire sense of safety, her respect, and her sexual polarity are directly tied to her subconscious belief that if the world completely falls apart, you will not break. When you follow the advice of the modern world and you decide to use your woman as an unpaid therapist, what are you actually doing? You come home after a terrible day. You are overwhelmed. You sit on the couch and you completely unload. You tell her how terrified you are of failing. You tell her you do not know what you are doing with your life. You complain about your boss. You let your voice crack. You show her that the storm is completely destroying you. You expect her to hold you. You expect her to offer you unconditional maternal love. And in the moment, she might. She might rub your back. She might tell you that everything is going to be okay. She will play the role of the nurturing mother because society has told her that is what a supportive partner does. But underneath that interaction, deep within her primitive brain, a catastrophic alarm is going off. The illusion of the fortress has just been completely shattered. She looks at you, and her biology registers a terrifying truth. The man who is supposed to protect me from the storm is currently being crushed by the storm. If he cannot handle his own mind, how can he possibly handle the world? How can he protect me? How can he protect our future? You have taken the massive, crushing weight of your own anxiety, and you have physically placed it onto her shoulders. You forced her to become the rock. Women absolutely despise being forced to be the rock for a man. It forces them out of their feminine energy and into a state of hypervigilant, masculine survival mode. They will deeply resent you for it. The decline is not immediate. It is a slow, agonizing rot. First, the respect vanishes. She stops asking for your opinion because she no longer views you as a pillar of strength. Then, the attraction dies. Sexual polarity is driven by the dynamic between masculine stability and feminine chaos. When you become the chaotic, emotional one, the polarity is completely neutralized. She begins to view you not as a conqueror, but as a child that she has to manage. And finally, she will leave. She will not tell you that she is leaving because you cried. She will say she needs to find herself, or that the spark is gone. But the brutal truth is, she had to evacuate a collapsing building. You evicted her from the safety of your fortress because you were too weak to hold up the walls yourself. This does not mean you cannot have problems. This does not mean you are a robot who never feels the crushing weight of reality. You are a man. You will face terrifying odds. You will experience profound doubt. You will bleed. But you do not bleed on the people you are supposed to protect. You do not take the chaotic, toxic waste of your own internal struggle and dump it into the living room of your family. A sovereign man processes his pain in the dark. If you need to break down, you break down alone in your car. You go to the gym, and you physically smash the anxiety out of your nervous system with heavy iron. You sit in the absolute silence of your own mind, and you wrestle with your demons until you have choked them into submission. You process the raw, chaotic emotion in absolute isolation. And what you present to your partner, what you bring back into your home, is not the panic. You bring back the solution. You bring back the strategy. You bring back the calm, cold certainty of a man who has looked into the abyss and refused to blink. When she asks you how your day was, and you are secretly fighting a massive war at work, you do not trauma dump. You look her in the eye with absolute stillness, and you say, "It was a heavy day, but I have it completely under control." That sentence is the ultimate aphrodisiac. That sentence is the absolute peak of masculine power. You are acknowledging the friction of reality, but you are assuring her that the walls of the fortress are made of titanium. The modern world calls this toxic masculinity. They call it emotional suppression. They are wrong. It is emotional mastery. Emotional suppression is shoving the pain down and pretending it does not exist until it destroys your organs. Emotional mastery is taking the chaotic energy of the pain, locking it in the furnace of your own discipline, and using it to power your execution. You must understand that your emotional stability is a utility. It is not about you. It is about the people who rely on you. Your team, your children, your woman. They do not need to know how heavy the burden is. They just need to know that your shoulders are broad enough to carry it without snapping. Do not let the modern narrative turn you into an emotional bleeder. Do not trade your biological imperative for the cheap, fleeting comfort of a therapy session on your living room couch. We have established that the free market is a predatory arena and that your relationships require a foundation of unshakable stone. So the inevitable question arises, what do you do with the pain? What do you do with the crippling anxiety, the profound doubt, and the psychological bleeding that threatens to break your mind in the dark? The modern therapist will tell you that if you do not talk about your feelings, if you do not open the valve and vent your emotions to the world, you will explode. That is the mentality of a cheap plastic bottle. A plastic bottle cannot handle pressure. A plastic bottle bursts the moment the environment becomes hostile. You are not a plastic bottle. You are tasked with building the architecture of the Stoic fortress. You must completely separate the concept of suppression from the concept of mastery. Suppression is the act of a coward. The coward feels the terror, refuses to look at it, shoves it under the rug, and frantically distracts himself with cheap dopamine, hoping the monster will just go away. The monster never goes away. It rots under the floorboards and eventually destroys the house. Mastery, the path of the sovereign, is an entirely different mechanism. It is the operation of a closed-loop nuclear reactor. Inside the sovereign fortress, deep underground, far away from the prying eyes of the public, the partners, and the enemies, there is a containment chamber. When the sovereign experiences trauma, fear, or profound existential doubt, he does not throw it out the window for the peasants to see. He does not put it on display in the courtyard. He takes that highly volatile, radioactive material, he carries it down into the dark, and he throws it directly into the reactor. He seals the heavy lead doors. He sits in the absolute, terrifying silence of his own mind, and he looks directly at the monster. He lets the immense, crushing pressure of his own logic, discipline, and Stoic framework break the emotional atoms apart. He does not cry about the toxic waste. He converts it into pure, unstoppable, physical energy. He uses the terror of failure as the exact fuel required to stay awake for 3 days and build the empire. He processes everything. He leaks nothing. I want you to burn this central metaphor into your retinas. Look at the bleeding swimmer, and look at the Iron Submarine. The modern man has been conditioned to be the bleeding swimmer. He is frantically splashing on the surface of the ocean, exhausted, crying for help, bleeding openly from his wounds. He is begging the sharks, the cold currents, and the indifferent sky to understand his trauma. He thinks his vulnerability makes him beautiful. He is a pathetic, noisy spectacle, and within minutes, he will be violently devoured by the realities of the deep. Now, look at the Iron Submarine. The submarine dives into the darkest, coldest, most unforgiving depths of the ocean. It descends into an abyss where the light does not reach. It is subjected to millions of pounds of crushing, deadly, absolute pressure. The entire ocean is actively trying to crush the hull and annihilate everything inside. But the submarine does not leak. It does not complain about the pressure. It does not open a window to let the ocean know how hard it is to survive. It does not seek empathy from the water. It remains a sealed, impenetrable, completely self-reliant monolith of iron. It uses the pressure to propel itself forward. It moves silently toward its target, carrying lethal weapons, entirely unbothered by the chaos outside its walls. You must become the Iron Submarine. When the pressure of life becomes agonizing, when the business is failing, when the enemies are circling, you do not vent. You do not leak. You dive deeper. You let the pressure compress you. You let it harden your psychological armor, and you make yourself utterly impenetrable. You will say, "But I need someone to talk to. I cannot carry this alone." That is the final lie of the ego. You do not need sympathy. Sympathy is a warm, toxic blanket that puts you to sleep while your house is burning down. You need a strategy. You need a solution. If you require counsel, if the burden is truly blinding your strategic vision, you do not go to your subordinates, and you do not go to your woman. You seek out a mentor. You seek out a superior. You seek out a blood-tested brother-in-arms who operates on the exact same sovereign frequency as you. And when you speak to him, you do not speak in the pathetic, weeping language of vulnerability. You speak in the cold, mechanical language of logistics. You do not say, "I am so scared. I feel like a failure. Please validate me." You look him in the eye and you say, "Here is the current obstacle. Here is my assessment of the threat. Here are my structural deficits. Where is the flaw in my strategy?" That is not vulnerability. That is a tactical debriefing. You are not asking him to hold your hand. You are asking him to sharpen your sword. You maintain your respect, you maintain your leverage, and you extract the data required to win the war. Tonight, the era of the open book comes to an agonizing, permanent end. You will no longer volunteer your weaknesses to a world that is eager to exploit them. You will retract your confessions. You will immediately stop over-explaining your internal struggles to people who have not earned the right to see your scars. Close the heavy iron gates of your mind. Pull up the drawbridge. Stop apologizing for your stoicism. Stop letting modern culture shame you into dropping your armor. Your armor is not toxic. Your armor is the only thing keeping you alive in a world of wolves. Let the world outside look at you and see only cold, impenetrable stone. Let them see only the heavy cannons of your execution. You do not need their pity. You do not need their toxic empathy. You do not need them to understand your inner child. You only need their absolute, undeniable submission to your physical results. This is core wisdom. If you are ready to stop bleeding for the sharks, close the gates of the fortress, and walk the path of the sovereign, subscribe. Leave the herd behind.